Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good to see everyone. And we are going to begin with Hinei Ma Tov, how good it is to be together.
Ma Tovu.
I'm sorry, Ma Tovu is what I meant. How good it is to be together. Now, how beautiful are your tents, O Jacob? Sorry about that.
Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, la la la.
Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, v'ani berov chastecha avo veitecha. Eshtachaveh el heichal kodshecha ve'yiratecha. Eshtachaveh el heichal kodshecha ve'yiratecha.
Yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da, da 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 da, yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da, yada
Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, v'ani berov chastecha avo veitecha. Eshtachaveh el heichal kodshecha ve'yiratecha. Eshtachaveh el heichal kodshecha ve'yiratecha.
ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la.
That's normally a piece that we sing in the morning on Saturday morning when we enter the synagogue. But since we rarely have Shabbat morning services, I thought it'd be nice to have it tonight. So Ruth Geller is going to light our candles for us this Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotecha, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Blessed are you, the eternal, our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with your commandments and has instructed us to light the Shabbat candles.
Thank you so much, Ruth. And Morris is going to lead us in the Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reheshit, ki hu yom techila lamikra'e kodesh, zecher letziat mitzrayim, ki vanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, ve'shabbat kodshecha, be'ahava uvratzon, chinkaltanu, baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh hashabbat. Amen.
L'chaim. So last week's Torah portion was Yitro, which includes the 10 Commandments, and we didn't get much of a chance to talk about it. So I'm going to focus on it this evening. We'll also be talking a little bit about this week's Torah portion. The first commandment of the 10 is somewhat odd. It states, I am Adonai, your God. Now, how is that a commandment? And even more importantly, perhaps, why does God reveal God's self to human beings? After all, as commentator Zohar Atkins suggests, all cultures have a story of how the world was created, but not all cultures have a story in which the same God that created the world speaks to a people and enjoins it to enter into relationship with it. What could compel God to seek relationship? And here's what Zohar Atkins proposes. Revelation is about relationship. The God who speaks to us reveals God's self as a God who wants, even needs us to listen, to witness God. If we think of the Torah as God's self-disclosure, the way we read and respond to it takes on a unique intimacy. We aren't just studying for our own self-edification or out of some obligatory devotion. We are studying so that we can encounter the divine. And it's not coincidental that the revelation of God at Sinai occurs right after the liberation of the slaves from Egypt. God lets God's self be recognized by ex-slaves, by those who have lived unrecognized themselves. And in so doing, God also shows the Israelites that they matter, that they have dignity, that they are seen. We continue with the circle song.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us imprisoned. Circle for release. Circle for the planet. Circle for each soul. Children of our children, keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet. Circle for each soul, for the children of our children, keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned. the children of our children keep the circle whole.
It's been a while since we've been able to see Morris multiply himself and sing his own harmony. We continue with the Hatzi Kaddish, followed by the Baruch Hu, the call to worship.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Ve'alma divrach hirute, ve'amlich malchute, bechayechon v'yomechon, uv'chaye kol bet Yisrael, bagala, bagala, uv'izman kariv, ve'imeru, Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach, le'alam ulal me'al maya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, Vishtabach, Vitpa'ar, Vitnoman, Vitnaseh, Vithadar, Vithale, Vithalal, Shemei de Kudisha, Brichu, Le'ela min kol bechata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Da'amiran be'alma, Ve'imeru, Amen. Yadadai, yadai, yadai, yadadai, yadai, yadadai, yadai, 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 Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam, 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 va'ed, Yadadai, yadai, 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 yadai,
So we talked about the God of the first commandment, and Yehuda Amichai, an Israeli poet, has written a number of very interesting poetry about God. And this one is the one we're going to read tonight. My father was God and did not know it. He gave me the 10 commandments, neither in thunder nor in fury, neither in fire nor in cloud, but in gentleness and in love. He added caresses and added kind words, adding, I beg you, and please. He sang, keep and remember, in a single melody, and he pleaded and cried quietly between one commandment and the next. Don't take your God's name in vain. Don't take it, not in vain. I beg you, don't bear false witness against your neighbor. He hugged me tightly and whispered in my ear, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't murder. And he put the palms of his open hands on my head with the Yom Kippur blessing. Honor, love, in order that your days might be long on earth. And my father's voice was white like the hair on his head. Later, he turned his face to me one last time, like on the day he died in my arms, and said, I want to add 2 to the 10 commandments. The 11th commandment, don't change. The 12th commandment, You must surely change. So said my father, and then he turned from me and went off, disappearing into strange distances. Ahavat Olam, about God's revelation, that God revealed God's Torah out of love.
Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amecha Ahavta Amcha Ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta, Otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shofteinu u'kumenu nasiach bechukecha v'nizmak b'divrei toratecha ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה, נגה יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל.
And we continue with the Shema, our statement of faith. Carol Lee, will you please lead us in the Ve'ahavta?
Be happy too. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'chol nafshecha u'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher Anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha V'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shiftecha b'veitecha, u'vlechtecha v'derech, u'v'shofbecha u'v'kumecha, u'kshartam le'od al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot beinenecha, u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha laman tiskaru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'Elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeti etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem.
Thanks so much, Carolee.
My pleasure.
So Rabbi Chaim Shalom notes that before we even get to the Ten Commandments, a verse holds a wonderful secret that Rashi helps us understand. As you know, Rashi is the medieval French commentator. In the third month after the children of Israel left the land of Egypt, on that day, they came to the Sinai desert. And they traveled from Rephidim and they came to the Sinai desert and they encamped in the desert, and Israel encamped opposite the mountain. Rashi notices that we have a number of verbs in the plural. They came, they traveled, they came, they encamped. But that the second verse finishes with a singular verb. The subject is simply Israel rather than the children of Israel. Rashi comments on this discrepancy as one person with one heart. So Rashi understands the use of the singular for the last verb to be telling us that as we encamped opposite Mount Sinai, we were as one person with one heart. We weren't fighting, we were all together. What a crazy concept, the whole Jewish people working together in unison. And it's important to remember that this is before we receive the Torah. It is not our religion that brings us together, but our peoplehood. We may be completely different from each other, from different places, with different outlooks, and with different practices, but we are family. And that's what Rashi tells us. The Mi Chamocha, the song we sang after we were liberated from slavery, is next. And this is a version that we were introduced to by Amy Pearlstein, our current president. It's based on Fish, a band that's spelled P-H-I-S-H, which is Wading in the Velvet Sea.
sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the, I've been waiting in the, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the, I've been waiting in the. Mi kamocha va'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedor b'kodesh. Nora tehilot osef eleh. Nora tehilot osef eleh. I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the, I've been waiting in the, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the, I've been waiting in the. Mi kamocha va'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedor b'kodesh. Nora tehilot osef eleh. Nora tehilot osef eleh. I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the, I've been waiting in the, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the, I've been waiting in the. Mi kamocha va'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedor b'kodesh. Nora tehilot osef eleh. Nora tehilot osef eleh. I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the, I've been waiting in the, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the velvet sea. Whoa, I've been waiting in the, I've been waiting in the sea.
We have some very talented people in our congregation. So in the last few verses of the Torah portion Yitro, God tells the Israelites, "Thus shall you say to the Israelites, you yourselves saw that I spoke to you from the very heavens. With me, therefore, you shall not make any gods of silver, nor shall you make for yourselves any gods of gold." Rabbi Michael Strassfeld sees significance in these verses. He suggests, one, it's the encounter, not the content, that is crucial about Sinai. The people of Israel encountered the Holy One. Our ongoing task is to figure out what that encounter means and how it might help us live lives of meaning and caring. We can do that by listening for the voice of Sinai that calls out to us every day. Two, with me. You will not find God in gold or silver, not even in stones if you hew them. I am God that cannot be shaped by you. I do not need to be magnificent like gold nor plain like stones. I will be what I will be. And 3, you will find me everywhere. Every makom, every place is a gateway to heaven. If you strive to come close, we will meet each other again and again, and you will find blessing, just as Abraham did on his journey. Hashkivenu, may we lie down in peace.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu malkeinu lechayim. 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 Ushmor tzeitenu
yard in Trenchtown, oh, by observing the hypocrites as they would mingle with the good people we meet. Yeah, good friends we have, or good friends we've lost along the way. Yeah, in this bright future, you can't forget your past. So dry your tears, I say, and everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be all I say. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu malkeinu lechayim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu malkeinu lechayim.
And we continue with the tefillah, which if you'd like to stand, you may, or you may continue to sit down.
Adonai Sephatai, Sephatai Tiftach, Ufi Yadid Tehilatecha. Adonai Sephatai, Sephatai Tiftach, Ufi Yadid Tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzhak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim ve'Konei Hakol ve'Zocher Chazdei Avot ve'Imahot U'Mevi Geulav Livnei V'neihem Leman Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ve'Ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayeh HaKol Atah Rav Lehoshia Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed Mechayeh HaKol Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot Umidom Elach Melech Memit Umechayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman Atah Lehachayot HaKol Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayeh HaKol Atah Kadosh v'Shemcha Kadosh U'Kadoshim B'chol Yom Yehalelucha Se'ela Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
We take a moment of silent prayer. And we conclude the Amidah with Oseh Shalom, a prayer for peace.
Oseh Shalom bimromav Hu ya'aseh Shalom aleinu Ve'al kol Yisrael Ve'imru Amen Ya'aseh Shalom Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael 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 Ya'aseh Shalom Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
We take a moment now to think of those in need of healing, whether of body, of mind, or of spirit. We think of congregants and friends and family of congregants, Jonathan Davidson, Ben Henderson, Kara Gilman, Rabbi Steve Robbins, Gloria Mangus, Steve Lux, Leslie Ferris, Pamela Mangus, Johnny Sickhat, Sid Love, Larry Miller, Jeff Simons, Barbara Droutman, Reverend Dr. Tom Bohach, Mark McGuire, Martha Miller, Judy Richmond, Larry Wittek, Fernando Guerrero, Mark Edwards, Zach Frankenberg, Miriam Thrawn, Joseph Ritter, Mariola Chosek, Lita Mintz, Elaine Thompson. And if you'd like to add a name, please just do so in the chat or unmute, please.
Diana Anderson,
Ruth, Sandra, and Jess, I'm sorry? ahead.
Alicia Verada, Kirsten Walsh,
So in the chat, Ruth, Sandra, and Jess Landis, Judy Cohen, Ron Jones and Ron Brazil, Lucy Hogel, Irma Kemp, John Torchia, Gina Drake, Dan Reef, Greg Taravella, Renee Jablonski, Tom Jablonski, Jeff Hicks, Eleanor Gailey, Raul Camacho. Any others? So we join in the Misha Berach, the prayer for healing.
מי שברך אבותינו מקור הברכה לאמותינו, may the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha la'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
So tonight we're marking the National Council of Jewish Women's Repro Shabbat, a nationwide event during which we'll explore the Jewish values surrounding reproductive health, rights, and justice. So this week, our Torah portion is Mishpatim, and it's the perfect source for this discussion as it includes verses that form the basis for how Judaism views abortion. Now, I want to be really clear, I'm not advocating for or against abortion. Deciding to have an abortion is a very difficult and a very personal decision. But what I am advocating is for a woman's right to choose. And reproductive rights includes access or means of family planning, their family, and having a child. Abortion is sometimes necessary, and it's extremely important to fight for. Reproductive rights, freedom, justice also means fighting for people facing infertility and other family building challenges. But tonight we're going to focus specifically on abortion. Let's begin by listening to the testimony of Stephanie Lorraine from Florida. She says, when I was 17, I needed an abortion and was unable to tell my parents. Due to parental involvement laws in the state of Florida, I was not able to get an abortion without the notification and presence of my parents. I was forced to seek out a judicial bypass, which is the process of having a judge decide the fate of your abortion. After finding out I was pregnant, I searched the internet for ways to end my own pregnancy. I read I could take 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C over 5 days. I considered throwing myself down the stairs. I even considered ending my life, knowing that a pregnancy would be the end of my future. That's how desperate I was. After days of calling, I finally got through to a hotline worker who connected me with an attorney who agreed to take my case pro bono. I finally felt some relief. I spent the next 2 weeks working at my waitressing job, saving up my tips for my abortion, attending my college classes, and gathering all the documentation that the attorney had requested. I had an ultrasound, and I was forced to see it even though I didn't want to. I had to gather police records from the times my father was charged with child abuse after beating me and leaving me with bruises. I provided my school transcripts reflecting my dual enrollment course load. I even wrote an essay talking about why I desperately needed an abortion. I turned in all those papers to a judge in Duval County, Florida, who presided over my fate. Young people face a double-edged sword of stigma with their reproductive health care. If they continue their pregnancies, they are unsupported and deemed irresponsible. And if they pursue an abortion, we're stigmatized, forced to deal with laws that present barriers denying us our constitutional right to an abortion. Although I worked and studied since I was 13 years old to support my family, when it came to decisions about my body or my life, I was told I was not capable of making my own decisions. My abortion was a means of survival and self-preservation for a future I wanted to live on my own terms. The right to a safe and legal abortion is currently in jeopardy in this country. Laws have been or are being passed in several states, limiting women's ability to have an abortion. In 2021, more than 600 anti-abortion laws were introduced in 47 states, with at least 106 different abortion restrictions enacted in 19 states, the most in any year since Roe versus Wade. The current Supreme Court is also poised to overturn Roe versus Wade or to severely restrict it, leaving the right to abortion to individual states. And as always, people of color and those with disabilities are those who are most impacted. Now, we've all heard horror stories about women forced to undergo back alley abortions. The US already has the highest rate of maternal mortality and morbidity among industrialized countries, with Black Americans and American Indian, Alaska Natives 3 times more likely to die of pregnancy-related causes than white Americans. A national abortion ban would lead to a 21% rise in the number of overall pregnancy-related deaths and a 33% rise in such deaths among Black women. So what does Judaism have to say about this issue? Well, in this week's Torah portion, we read the following verse. When men fight and one of them pushes a pregnant woman and a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues, the one responsible shall be fined according as the woman's husband may exact from him, the payment to be based on reckoning. But if other damage ensues, the penalty shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. In other words, if a woman's life is taken, then lex talionis is applied, a life for a life. But if the woman miscarries, the fetus is not considered a life and only monetary compensation is due. Additionally, for the first 40 days of pregnancy, the fetus is considered by the Talmud to be, quote, mere water. And for the rest of the pregnancy, the fetus is considered a part of the woman's body, not an independent person. Indeed, the baby is not even considered a full human being until a majority of its body emerges from the mother. Thus, until that point, the well-being of the mother supersedes that of the baby. Now, here are the opinions of a number of Jewish legal decisors. You'll notice that they stretch the definition of what constitutes harm to the mother, and please keep in mind that these are Orthodox and conservative rabbis. Rabbi Mordechai Winkler writes, mental health risk has been definitely equated with physical health risk. The woman in danger of losing her mental health unless the pregnancy is interrupted, would therefore accordingly qualify. Rabbi Ben Zion Chai Uziel says, it is clear that abortion is not permitted without reason. That would be destructive and frustrative of the possibility of life. But for a reason, even if it is a slim reason, such as to prevent disgrace, then we have precedent and authority to permit it. According to Rabbi Cass Abelson, there is clear precedent in our tradition to permit abortion of a fetus to save a mother's life, to safeguard her health, or even for a, quote, very thin reason, such as to spare her physical pain or mental anguish. And Rabbi Aharon Lichtenstein writes, it is clear that saving a life is not the only sanction for permitting an abortion. Other ethical and humane factors may also be taken into account. It would seem to me that issues such as kavod habriot, dignity of persons, shalom bayit, domestic peace, and sa'ar, pain, which all carry significant halachic weight in other contexts, should be considered in making these decisions. Now, this perspective is, of course, very different from that of the Catholic religion, for example, which considers life to begin at conception. Now, this difference doesn't imply that Judaism takes abortions lightly. Certainly, in Judaism, life is so precious that saving a life takes precedence over all Shabbat restrictions. But it does suggest that the government that chooses to pass laws granting fetal personhood and or asserting that life begins at conception violates the Establishment Clause by enshrining one religious view into law. At the same time, it violates most Jews' right to practice Judaism, which permits and even sometimes requires terminating pregnancies if the life of the pregnant person is at stake. As the Jewish American author Cynthia Ozick writes, what our faith communities would be wise to choose is religious responsibility undertaken autonomously, independently, and on cherished private ground, turning their backs on anyone, however estimable or prudential, who proposes that the church steeple ought to begin to lean on the town hall roof. In the Talmud, there's a dispute between rabbis Hillel and Shammai, one of many. In this particular case, they disagree about what constitutes incest. Now, this is a very important issue because it is one of 3 transgressions for which you are supposed to be put to death. But they concluded that the decision should not be arrived at by majority vote. Rather, the followers of Shammai would rule as he did, and the followers of Hillel would rule as he did. And this seems like a very good model for abortion. Indeed, why impose a legislation about abortion? Why not allow people to follow their own conscience and their own religion when it comes to an issue such as abortion? We must remember that people have a range of experiences and emotions about abortion, from the conflicted to the clear, the sorrowful and grieving to the relieved, the grateful, the liberated. Can't we make space for and honor all of those stories? Why not let people make their own decisions? So I'd like to, right now, thank our wonderful musical people who are not necessarily all here. There's one person behind the scenes right now who is here, which is Dory Yarmoth, who was the person responsible for getting all of these up onto Zoom, but also was responsible for a lot of the music and a lot of the editing of those wonderful pieces. And of course, Morris Maduro, who's got that beautiful, beautiful voice. Cantor Bob and Barbara, who also have beautiful voices. Adam Perlstein for drum, and Eric Sabar for horn and guitar. We're really, really, really blessed to have those people in our congregation. And of course, Carol Lee Jaspin, thank you for leading us in the Ve'ahavta, and Ruth Geller for leading us in the candle blessing. I want to mention a few things about what's coming up here. So we have a lot of adult ed coming up. I want to point out, aside from Tanakh study, we call it Tanakh study because we've gone beyond the Torah. We spent 9 years going through the entire Torah. We're now in the section of the Tanakh called Nevi'im, which is prophets. And we're right now in the middle of the story of King David, a very complicated and interesting story. And that will continue in February, March, April, and May. But we have Rabbi Harry Rosenfeld, who is currently the president of PAR, the West Coast Rabbis Organization, who's going to offer 2 sessions, one on February 3rd at 6 p.m., and it's going to be a tour of Eastern Europe. And then on February 10th, he's going to do Quantum Leaps in Jewish History, a look at the huge changes in Judaism, focusing on Sinai, the destruction of the temples, and the Napoleonic Sanhedrin, which led to the Reform movement. So those should be very interesting sessions. Then we are co-sponsoring, although really it's Kol Ami out in Calabasas that's really sponsoring this and allowing a lot of other synagogues to tag along. On Saturday morning, February 26th, Rabbi Dr. Joshua Garraway is going to speak about a Jewish utopia. Can we really repair the world? And he has spoken to our congregation before, and people really liked him. So I encourage people to come on Saturday morning, the 26th. And then Harvey Kurland, since last Shabbat, we had Rabbi Locker and Rabbi Koch and myself all tuning into this service. He said, you know, I'd be really interested in knowing why the 3 of you decided to become rabbis. All 3 of us are second career rabbis. Rabbi Locker was a physicist, Rabbi Koch was an attorney, and I was a TV producer. So on February 27th at 2 p.m., which is a Sunday afternoon, the 3 of us are going to talk about why we became rabbis. And of course, there's a lot more in March. Marcia Falk will be coming. She's got a new Haggadah. And then later on in March, I'm going to be teaching a 4-part series on the book of Job, why and when bad things happen to good people and how we deal with that. I just want to see if anybody else has any announcements or would like to share anything. And I think it's early enough that if you want to say a couple words about the sermon I gave, you're more than welcome. And thank you for the lovely comments in the chat. I appreciate that very much. But happy to hear some other opinions or anything you'd like to share. Nobody? Everybody's being very shy. Okay.
My sister's arriving tomorrow night, please God.
Oh, wonderful. So she was able to make it, huh?
I hope so, yes.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that, Susie. Yeah, we were all really sick of this pandemic, and yet the numbers are very, very high here in Riverside County. We're at the highest level that the CDC has. So we're trying to be super cautious. We're going to have online only for at least the next few weeks. The COVID committee is meeting on Wednesday night, so we'll see if we feel comfortable at some point, coming back in person, but we are going to rely on Dr. Martin Schlesselberg and, other scientific bases for making that decision. Okay, we're going to continue with the Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשינו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד ארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, ודעת היום והשבותה אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת, אין עוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We now take a moment to think of those who are no longer with us. May their memories be for a blessing. Is anyone observing Shiva Shloshim or the first year of mourning and would like to mention the name? You may do so by unmuting or by putting it in the chat. First year, Alina, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Edith Tanazaki.
Stan Walkman, Joanna Heslin.
First year, Elena Archibek Farris, Irene Sherman, Azelle Walton. Yesterday, I'm so sorry, Carl. Any other names? And we're observing yard sites this Shabbat for David Blyer, Edith G. Lair, Anne Reef Brown, Terry Metch, Donald Callahan, Fred Thompson, Ted Beld, Rose Ramick, Faye Cohen, Ken Sirotnik, Stephanie Areola, Jean Cohen, Fanny Hockman Scordia, Harry Badofsky, Brandon Whitelaw, Morris Perlmutter, Harry Dick, Kermit Baumel, Denise Joganik, Joseph Stone, Bernice Kleinwax, Dolly McCauley, Ruth Villalobos, Jeanette Cannell, Joseph Lux, Peter Axel, Henrietta Hosch, Joe Gilman, Ira Spitzer, Henry Brown, Esther Goffman. And if you'd like to put any names in the chat or unmute, please do so. First year also Reverend Evans Willie Davis. Are there any other? Lula May Clemens? Any other yard sites? Okay, you may unmute if you'd like and join me in the Mourner's Kaddish. Yikadal v'yikadash Shnei Rabbah Belma Divra Hute Yamlich Malhute V'chayachon v'yomechon Chaye Dehol Beit Yisrael V'agala U'zman Kari Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'olam U'olei Alaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yita'ar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shmei Dekudusha V'richu Le'ela Mimkol B'chata V'shirata Tushbachata V'nechmata Ta'amiran Ve'alma Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabbah Min Shmaya V'chaim Aleinu Ve'al Yisrael Imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Amen. Amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, as together we say,
Amen.
Amen. And I'd like to ask everyone to please mute yourselves again, and we will conclude with Salam, the Rick Rec version, a prayer for peace in Hebrew and Arabic.
Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Ve'am Kulam. Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Ve'am Kulam. Salam Aleinu Ve'am Kol HaOlam. Salam, salam, salam Aleinu Ve'am Kol HaOlam. Salam, salam. Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Ve'am Kulam. Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Ve'am Kulam. Salam Aleinu Ve'am Kol HaOlam. Salam, salam, salam Aleinu Ve'am Kol HaOlam. Salam, salam. Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kulam. Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kulam. Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kulam. Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Odevo Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kulam.
And of course, what would Shabbat be without a motzi? So for those who haven't eaten yet, here is a motzi.
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. If you'd like to stay on to chat, you are more than welcome to do so. And if you need to go eat or do something else, good night.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.